Hey, Leo here with Focus Snowboards, and today we're going to be looking at everyone's favourite first trick, and that's the Ollie. So depending who you ask on how to do an Ollie, you're either going to get a really simple explanation. Sounds something like, oh yeah, just lean back and jump. Or you're going to get a more complex explanation, which, you know, along the lines of, well, you want to move your hips towards the tail of the snowboard, you want to shuffle the snowboard forwards underneath you. As you do that, the tail of the board's going to bend, and you're going to utilize that spring load to go up into the air as you jump. Then you're going to suck the knees up whilst you're looking where you're going, put the feet down and absorb for impact. So there's obviously easy ways and more complicated ways to explain that same trick. And I think a lot of the time the stuff that people aren't talking about is the relationship between their body and their snowboard and how that impacts the trick. So if you really want to develop your Ollie to a point where it's pretty polished, the thing you really want to explore is the flex and the rebound properties in your snowboard. Most people, when they go buy a new board, they're always interested to know what the flex rating is. You know, is it a medium? Is it a stiff? Is it playful, responsive? Is it a 5, 6, 7, 8? Now here's the kicker. All the companies are different. The reason that I'm riding on is rated at a 7. That does not mean that that's the same as a Capita or a Burton or a K2 on their 7 rating. So this is why this step's so important. So for me, riding away and cruising around the mountain, when I'm doing an Ollie, I'm starting in a pretty low stable position, and I am utilizing kind of a bit of a blend of moving my body back and shuffling the board underneath me. So that's how I'm going to practice and explore my flex and rebound in my snowboard. And you'll see this as I go through it a few times, but I want to find out when my board bounces back, and that's kind of how I like to think about it. At what point do I feel the tail of the board bend, nose off the ground, and then it bounces back like it's trying to kick me forwards. And it's as simple as that. I'll try that left foot forward as well. Like, there will be a point where you feel it naturally want to give back, and that's where you don't want to fight it, you want to let go of that. And this is the timing of the release of an Ollie when you do jump off that back foot and push into the air. And this is often the missing piece for a lot of people, and it's because they ride one board one weekend, they rent another, they borrow off a friend, they just got a new board that they're not familiar with, and this is the thing that they're not that comfortable with, is when does it bounce back and tip them into the trick? And that's the information that's missing for them. So it takes a while to adjust to a new board, and you might have found that yourselves when you're out trying new equipment, why the Ollie or the trick doesn't feel as good on one board as it does another. And ultimately it's because you haven't had the time to dial in that bounce back feeling. So when you do get that bounce back pretty good, I'm getting a feel for it over and over again. That's when I want to let go of that trick. And without really trying too hard, you find that I'm effortlessly landing on both feet. I think a lot of people with an Ollie, they really focus on pushing hard off the ground, pulling their knees up to get air time, and through that process they end up kicking themselves off balance, landing on the nose or slapping the tail down as they go. Once you've had a good play around with that on flat ground, immediately you're going to have a better understanding of how your body impacts your snowboard, what that bounce back property is like in the gear that you're riding. So when it comes to practicing the Ollie in motion and how to transfer those skills in movement, you're really going to have to find yourself a pretty mellow green run. You can see, for me, I've chosen something well within my comfort zone, and once I've got a good grasp of the timing of these things, all I need to do is double down on finding that bounce back whilst I'm in motion. And everyone's going to be different for how long they need to take to do this. I'm obviously super familiar with the board I'm on and the movements for the trick. And so I'm not going to spend too much time practicing that bounce back. But instead looking for places on the mountain that I can put it into practice. When you take the time to get familiar with this trick, one of the keys in terms of your terrain selection is that you have a chance to go flat base. So look at the run behind me here. It's cambered off from right to left. And And I would say this isn't necessarily ideal. Okay, of course you can slow down, you can bring yourself to ride down the camber flat base, but if it's a busy day, you're probably going to be getting in the way and cutting off a lot of people. So for me, I really like to just be quite intentional with my selection of where I'm going to try to develop these skills. Ultimately, I know it's going to give me the best chance of success at the trick. Nice mellow section, and I can practice that bounce back as many times as I want within my comfort zone. Now the key behind that really is, if you're trying to do these things on a slanted off-camber run, you'll actually find it even harder to balance than you do on a flat run or a level run, because you're actually minimizing the surface that you get to take off from. So on a flat run that's level, you get to take off the entire flat base of the board. But on a run that's off camber or on a slope, I'm either taking off the ball of my back foot or the heel of my back foot, which isn't easy to do. So it gives me a greater chance of taking off in an unbalanced way and putting myself in an unbalanced position in the air and having a bit of a rough landing. And obviously, the more I practice these things, the more familiar I get with them. And then you can start getting a little bit more creative with where you do these things on the mountain. And as a recap for the Ollie, it's not the actual biomechanics of the trick that's difficult. Okay, like I said at the beginning, you can lean back and jump, you can get a pretty detailed description of where to move your body and how to pressure the tail of the board to release that spring. You can do all those good things, and you can still be missing the key ingredient of the relationship between you and the specific snowboard that you're on. And so your job really on your hunt for the perfect Ollie is to get to know your snowboard as much as you can. And as I like to label it, that bounce back property and the timing of that bounce back, that's what you need to double down on. So I'm hoping you've had a bit of a different take on an Ollie today, not just the simple, straightforward, this is how you do the trick, but more specifically overcoming some of the challenges as to why this trick doesn't always feel the same from one rider to the next.